My name is Tackett. I'm a second grade teacher at Southside Elementary School in Pike County. And we did restoring the Majestic chestnut tree. And I needed my students to understand that we have problems in our community. And that even though we want them to grow up to be problem solvers, they can be problem solvers right now. And so I wanted these 7- and 8-year-olds to understand our ecosystems and things that have been changed in our own community that maybe they could impact. So these are some of the Common Core standards that were covered. I'm an English language arts teacher, so of course I wanted to integrate many of the standards and informational texts and writing activities. And so the students were very involved and more excited than I've ever seen them with anything I've ever done in the classroom, because we ordered, with our grant, 8 Chromebooks. And I purposely chose Chromebooks instead of iPads because I wanted them to do word processing, and I wanted them to learn, do the shared research project, and then be able to write informative pieces and include facts from what they had researched. And it worked wonderfully. We got very proficient at using Google Drive. We started our unit with a mission that NASA offers. You can sign up. It's free, even though it's supposed to be for middle and high school students. Don't worry about that. You can go on and sign up. And I told them I was a second grade teacher and why I wanted to use it, and they let us take part. You actually send them latitude and longitudinal coordinates. Able to take pictures from the International Space Station. And the students just thought that was the neatest thing ever. Of course, so did I. And so they took pictures of our region, and I had the students compare that with pictures of the Appalachian forest and asked them what was the problem here. And so, of course, we realized that we have a lot of surface mining that's taken place. And so I asked them to start with that problem and dream about what can be done with these abandoned mine sites. I know there's reclamation standards, and they studied those, but what can we do with those reclaimed mine sites to make them useful for our community? And so I gave them the task of designing a reclamation project. There were 9 different groups. I've only covered 4 here. Build salt clay models of their project, paint it to make 3D props to go on it. They also had to make posters to advertise what they wanted to do, create brochures so you can see all the English language arts strand that's taken place. And then they wrote letters to leaders about what they thought should be done with the land. And then we had to settle as a class on one project, because the fact is, you know, they're 7 and 8 years old. They don't have any money to build factories or, amusement parks. One group did amusement parks because they said they wouldn't have to ride carnival rides for hillbilly days. I was like, that's so awesome. They really need to do that. So they had an amusement park, and then we had working farms, shopping malls, apartment complexes that for people that liked the view from the mountain that could look down into the valley. It was just one chance that reforestation is settled on is because we can all plant a tree, no matter. And so that became kind of our passion in the class. And the students looked at where should we plant trees. And it just made sense that the American Chestnut Trees range fell right within the heart of Appalachia and right where all these abandoned mine sites are that have already been cleared off. So it's not like you have to clear a forest to plant these trees. You literally have places that needed the trees planted. So as they looked at that, I thought, you know, we can't just show up on an abandoned mine site and plant trees. I bet something has to be done to the soil. So I emailed several people that I found online. I taught the kids that these weren't just meant for toys. They weren't just meant for games. They were meant and tools to get things done. And so they began to look at these as something more than something to play a game on. They researched, they found information that they needed to use in the unit. So I contacted several people, and a gentleman named Dr. Angel from the U.S. Department of Interior got in touch with me. He's with Appalachian. We're planting resistant American chestnut trees. And the history on American chestnut trees is they used to make up the canopy of the Appalachian woodlands. And 1 in 4 trees in our forest in 1904 was an American chestnut tree. But in 1904, a Chinese chestnut tree was brought over from Asia into New York City, and a blight fungus began to spread. It was airborne. And as it spread through the Appalachians, it destroyed these trees. Like almost 99% of the trees were completely destroyed. And the ones we have in our forest today that are American chestnuts cannot reproduce properly. They cannot grow past a certain height, and they're kind of dying as they grow. But they used to be a major cash crop in eastern Kentucky. So the kids just began to research this tree. We had teams that had been lost, animals that were extinct due to the blight. We had those that looked at mining reclamation and what would need to be done to the land before we plant the trees. And so as they researched, they just became like so professional in the classroom, because they would take their Chromebooks and they would just go to work. And I would just stand there in amazement, because I was just, this is exactly what we want them to do. It's project-based learning, and they were so excited and into this, because I was saying, what can we do? What are we going to do to make a difference in our own community? So they researched, they learned to work Google Drive. They all had a folder in Google Drive. They kept an online science journal. And I found that rather than using the Google Docs as much, we use those for letters and writing our argumentative piece, but they loved creating the slide presentations. And they would put pictures in there, and they would put all the facts, and we began to use that then to use some of the standards I didn't put up there, like punctuation, capitalization, all the grammar rules. And so we would look at the presentations, share them, and then I would use them like an editing tool, so we would all kind of help each other with the presentation. But these groups taught the other kids in the class. They also took surveys from SurveyMonkey throughout the unit to tell me how it was going, what they understood, what they didn't understand. Then iCurio came along, that we began to make iCurio discoveries and create folders in there. I felt so much safer than just searching the internet, to put them in iCurio and let them search about forest ecosystems. And then we did virtual field trips looking at webcams from other forests in the Appalachian that are thriving, from Robinson Forest. They have a live webcam as well. Then we had a class blog, and the students could post on there, and again, our grammar and spelling and punctuation, I had to have them check that and go back over it, because I was like, you don't want to put publish. You're going to use this as a draft until we're sure. And they began to understand the importance of editing and publishing for someone else to read. And of course, I still had to go in and pull a few of those off and say, that's not ready, because of course they wanted to publish immediately. The class project blog is Restoring the American Chestnut Tree STEM project, and it tells about ARI grant and STEM Fellows grant that had provided for us to have the Chromebooks and buy resources and books for them to use during this unit. They wrote letters to government leaders about what they wanted their abandoned mine sites to be, but they also wrote invitations to this planting event. And I was just amazed at the agencies that want to help these kids understand, because restoring the American chestnut tree is going to be a century-long process. And so if we don't let these kids take ownership of it and understand the importance of it and the story behind it, then they're not going to be able to carry that on. And so we have Green Forest Works, Appalachian Regional Reforestation Initiative, Office of Surface Mining, Reclamation and Enforcement, Department of Natural Resources for Kentucky, the City of Pikeville, and then Lynn Garrison, the president of the Kentucky chapter of the American Chestnut Foundation, has gotten donated these blight-resistant trees that are actually worth a lot of money, undisclosed. Like planting these, the students wrote a book about this land is our land, and it's a story of reclamation. And we change the face of eastern Kentucky and quit dreaming about the project that can be done, something about it, and they decided they could plant trees, and then future generations come along and they will explain the story of the American chestnut and how they helped at 7 and 8 years old to restore that to the mountains of Appalachia. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
The Chromebooks were donated by who?
The ARI grant helped to purchase Chromebooks, and Well, there's 8 in the classroom, but our library purchased some through PTO, and so we ended up being able to use 16 Chromebooks at a time. And these students have just gone crazy researching. They want to know, what are we going to research next? What